couple of questions, if I could. First of all, I'd like to say in many ways how much I admire you. How much I admire you in a town that's as polarized as I've ever seen it. You're the only high official who has managed to get the confidence of two presidents, and I think that's very much to your credit, sir. I'm waiting, I will wait anxiously. The staff statement is an indictment in many ways of the agency. I await your answer to some of those things in the staff statement. I also recognize that this is an agency which was devastated earlier by, in many cases, I think, mistaken critics in the Congress, mistaken or otherwise. A lot of good people left. It was very hard to rebuild the agency. You were unable to recruit on most of the good campuses in this country for a number of years. But when you tell me, you said it the second time now, 5 years to rebuild, I wonder whether we have 5 years. And that's what, when you say 5 years to rebuild the agency, that worries me a little bit.
5 more years to rebuild the clandestine service. Well, sir, you know, you have an infrastructure, you have a recruiting framework, you have a quality control, you have a student-to-faculty ratio, and you have a big pipeline. We built all of that in to make sure we can get this done. Nobody was paying attention to the plumbing. It's not sexy. You got to pay attention to the plumbing. And the bottom line is, to do this right, to build the platforms and access and cover and technology that we need, it's budgeted for, the President has recognized it. It's going to take another 5 years to build a clandestine service the way the human intelligence capability of this country needs to be run. That's just the fact from my perspective. We've made an enormous amount of progress in the first 5 years because we had a plan. We had a rhyme, we had a reason, we had a discipline. And I don't think people appreciate that the way they should.
Probably the most important criticism, one of the most important criticisms made of the whole intelligence apparatus is you don't talk to each other, or haven't in the past, and it's lack of communication. I guess specifically I'd like to ask what actions are being taken now to make sure, for instance, that the FBI's legal attaches and the CIA's station chiefs at least are working in tandem?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's interesting. Back 5 or 6 years ago, when the FBI first started to go overseas in big numbers, the first thing that Louis Freeh and I sat down and decided was that we were going to start having training, conferences, and interaction between the chiefs of station and the legates. And it's migrated over the course of time. And I think if you go overseas and talk to my chief of stations and our legates around the world, you will find an intimacy and an understanding about their responsibilities and roles that is the basis of interaction and communication from senior levels, the way we train, and the way we talk to each other. So I know that there was a lot that wasn't right about communication, but I'll tell you the first thing I did with Director Freeh is every quarter we sat down with the senior management of the FBI and the CIA. Every year, 4 times, we sat down and looked through common problems and how we could work through them. Operations, investigations, how we could train better and work better together, and that started as soon as I became director. So now, what we needed and have worked on consistently, and doing that all has to be migrated down to training and education at the earliest levels of people's career, cross-training. We're going to have an FBI special agent come through our clandestine training course for the first time in history in the next running of that course. It's important because we need to give them more training and insight about intelligence operations. We went over there and are helping them build their analytical capability. We're trying to help them build the reports cadre. Their communications architecture is something Bob has to fix himself to ensure that that communication is fulsome across lines. I would also say that the implication of the intelligence community can't talk to each other is wrong. There is architecture, data flow, and movement of data across our agencies every single day. Building that bridge with the law enforcement community, as the Terrorist Threat Integration Center will do when you have FBI case files, our operational files, domestic databases sitting in one place. It's exactly the model that will succeed. But the data has to show up.
You were very good at building relationships with your colleagues in government. There's no question about that. But one of your successes might not be. Who has responsibility if there's a dispute, for instance, between the two agencies regarding the best strategy, let's say, against a particular enemy, and do people in the field understand how those disputes are resolved?
Well, the way it operates today, Deputy Chief of our Counterterrorism Center is a senior FBI official. There are over 20 FBI officers who sit in my center today. We have officers over there. I've invited the committee to come out to sit through a 5 o'clock meeting. We have real operational issues that we put on the table. We have now an American division inside of CTC that basically talks to the Bureau about how do we best manage this case? What's the data that we seek? What's the operational strategy that we should employ? And we're fusing that in a very real way. Now, when the Counterterrorism Center and the Counterterrorism Division and TTIC all go to one building, the image you should have is not you walk into the building and the CIA goes right, the FBI goes left, and TTIC sits on the throne. The image you should have is that Bob and I are going to sit down and figure out what are the integrative structures across those lines that will create the kind of operational fusion that we need so that we're fully informed about how best to proceed in a specific case. That's the future of the cooperation.